Good evening. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you Ronit. Thank you Sammy for sponsoring tonight's class. Leilu Nishmat Yosef ben Yitzchak ben Tolila, Sammy's father. Sammy's father passed away this year exactly 26 years ago, and I overheard that Sammy was 26 when his father passed away. So half his life he had his father, the second half he didn't have his father. I don't think it's an ironic number, 26, the name of God. Also 26 plus 26 is the same number as Ben, son, Sammy being your father's only son. So may the connection, the spiritual connection that you and your father have continue to proceed till you grow to be a very old and wise man. And may you see a lot of joy, happiness, success, and nachat from all three of your daughters. And may your mother, who is with us this evening, who had a miracle over the past little while, may also live a long, happy, healthy life. Amen v'amen. Amen. Hopefully you're going to rejoice by the weddings, V'ezrat Hashem, very soon, right? Yeah. Okay. Tonight, ironically, tonight is also the yahrzeit, the Haskara of Rabbi Nightingale's father. Rabbi Nightingale is the rabbi here at Esha Torah, so we're also going to have his father in mind with tonight's study. His name was Yitzchak David ben Reuven. So may the two of them, amongst all other the neshamot that passed away, should have an aliyah, and all those in need of a quick recovery or any salvation or help, may they, Bezrat Hashem, have it very soon. Amen v'amen. Amen. We study weekly, as Ronit said, the Zera Shimshon on Wednesday night here in Hollywood, Florida. The Zera Shimshon was a fascinating rabbi from the 18th century, the chief rabbi of Italy. We'll just briefly say the short story. Most of you have heard it, but for those who are new and who haven't yet, maybe it'd be nice to hear about Rabbi Shimshon Chaim Nachmani, who was a great Torah scholar. He unfortunately fortunately he was a very successful rabbi, a very wise rabbi, a Kabbalist, an author at the same time, but unfortunately he had only one son, and that son passed away at a young age. Very unfortunate to not have any children, any descendants, any offspring. So he made a promise. And this is something we fulfill on a weekly basis. Some do it on a daily basis. He wrote this book, which is called the Zera Shimshon, which means the offspring of Shimshon. Shimshon was his name. So he wrote this book and promised in its introduction that anyone who learns from this book, he didn't say once a year, he didn't say once a day, he didn't say once a week, he didn't give a time. But I would think on a regular basis, once a week is definitely you're part of that promise. He promises himself, even for many years. It's been exactly 240 years since he passed away, that he will be there up in heaven as a father in heaven, showering down blessing on all of us who have health issues, God forbid, who have livelihood issues, emotional issues, physical issues, friends, family, all the hard things, people that need to find their match, whether it's your children or yourself. He promises that he will help with all of that just by learning his great Torah novelties. He says he adopts us as his very own children. So may tonight, amongst all the other classes we deliver at the Zera Shimshon, may we be blessed that he will be another one of our patriarchs, another one of our fathers in heaven, along with our patriarchs Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, obviously Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, and all the other great scholars that have passed away, yet left us such a wealth of knowledge and a great way to improve our lives. We're going to give a little introduction on this week's Torah portion, and once we get into the frame of what's going on, we're going to really understand the depth of what the Zera Shimshon is going to ask, reveal, and make practical to our lives. So, Jacob is 63 years old. Okay, I'm not going to ask anyone to raise your hand if you're over 63, don't worry. Jacob is 63 years old, and he just received the blessing that his father Isaac set out to give to his twin brother, yet elder, to Esav. So he steals the blessing based on how Rivka makes him and advises him how to do it, his very own mother. And Esav, we can all understand, was not happy at all. To the point where he wanted to kill his brother. God forbid, we should not know of such things. But Esav wanted to murder his very own brother. So Rivka, being our matriarch, the second of our 4 matriarchs, she had divine intervention, she had prophecy, and God told her these feelings of hatred and resentment and animosity and feelings of even wanting to kill his brother Jacob, that Esav was planning this. So Rivka had to find a way. How do we get Yaakov away? How's she going to get the son that she knows is going to succeed her husband in being the third of the patriarchs to leave town in order that Esav cools down? So, like every smart wife, she always tried, or at least we learn over here, she tried to figure out a way to let the man think of the great idea and let him think it's his idea. Right? It's like that old joke, the husband's the head and the woman's the neck, and she points them to the right direction. This is exactly what our matriarch Rivka does to Isaac. She comes over, so she can't come and tell her husband Isaac, you know, our son, our elder son, wants to kill our younger son. Because Yitzchak loved Esav. He believed in Esav so much that he believed he deserved the blessing. So she couldn't come and say that. So she came in a very smart way. She said, look at the girls that live around town over here. None of them are suitable. None of them are at the spiritual levels that we would want for our pious, humble, simple child Jacob. His whole life he was in the tents, learning Torah, learning about God, learning about creation, learning about nature, learning about the world that he lived in, and he wasn't out a hunter, and he wasn't going and sinning and murdering and stealing as Esav was. So you know what she says? She says, she didn't say all that, obviously. Okay? She just says, there's no good girl around. Maybe let's see if he can go elsewhere. So the Torah, if you pay very close attention to the end of last week's Torah portion, it's evident that it is Isaac himself, through Rivka's, provoking him to think this way. It was encouragement, very nice. It was clearly Rivka's idea to get Yitzchak to think, let's send him away.
There you go.
And the Torah clearly says, Isaac comes to his son Jacob and says, go back to your mother's hometown, because there are cousins which you can marry. So Rivka, in a genius way, had Isaac come up with the idea that she wanted. So the main reason was why Jacob had to leave was because his brother wanted to murder him. But the Torah tells us, you know what the right now understanding the reason is because he needs to find a good shidduch, as we say in Hebrew. He needs to find his match in a place where there are better girls. This is at 63 years old. He goes. Now on his way, he pauses and he says, you know what I'm going to do? 63, I'm a young man. I'm going to go back to yeshiva for 14 years. 14 years. Any math? How old does that make him when he's done? 77 years old. He says, now I'm ready to get married. I'm leaving. Okay, don't try this at home, okay? He's 77. Before he goes to yeshiva, he says, listen, I'm about to get married. I'm about to become a father. I'm about to enter the real world. As we know, Jacob had to enter the world of business and learning how to deal with a cunning father-in-law, a trickster. Again, don't try that at home. And he prepares himself for 14 years in this yeshiva. He now leaves the yeshiva and he sets out towards Haran. Just so we know, Haran was outside of the land of Israel. This was going to be the first time that our patriarch Jacob leaves the land of Israel. Abraham was obviously born outside of Israel. He came to Israel. He had to leave to Egypt during a famine. He came back. So Abraham was in both locations. Isaac was the only one, we've mentioned this before, was the only one of our patriarchs which never left the Holy Land of Israel. Jacob's first time to leave the land of Israel comes now. So he quickly, he has obviously divine help. He gets quickly to the border of Israel and Haran, where his wife's family, where his mother's family is from. He's going to meet his uncle, Lavan, as we know. He gets there quickly, and he realizes, I passed a very sacred place. I passed a very special place, and I did not optimize. I did not capitalize the opportunity to pray there. Does anyone know which place this is? Somebody? Not Merat HaMachpelah, not Kever Rachel. She wasn't, not yet. That's nowadays. Very good, very good. The place where his the place where his very own father was brought up as a sacrifice, although he wasn't sacrificed. This was Har HaMoriah. Har HaMoriah, which is the center of the universe, the center of the world that we live in. Over there is the foundation of the creation of this entire world. This is where Adam was created from. This is where Isaac was brought to be slaughtered. This is where we're going to see now Jacob's going to take his first nap or his first real sleep in the past 14 years. Okay, we'll explain that. This is the very own place of the Kodesh HaKodashim, the Holy of Holies. It was a very, very special, monumental place. So Jacob's like, I passed by where my father was almost sacrificed. He was willing to sacrifice his life for God based on his father telling him this is what God said. How could I not go back to that holy, holy place and pray? The Talmud tells us the moment that Jacob thought, I want to go back there, Hashem made a miracle. In Hebrew we say kfitzat haderech. He literally, the road jumped for him, and he got there within moments. Instantly, he finds himself at Har HaMoriah. He gets there, and the Talmud explains that what is God going to host Jacob and not allow him to sleep? A good host doesn't only feed you, but they let you stay overnight. Okay? Try this, don't try this, depending on who your host is. God was obviously able to host Yaakov at this very special place. So what did God do? He quickly had the sun set. The sun was setting, and this was the first time that Jacob now institutes the evening prayer, the Tefillat Arvit. We know Abraham institutes the morning prayer, Isaac institutes Mincha, the afternoon prayer, and Jacob's the one who institutes the evening prayer, Arvit. So he prays right now for the first time because he realizes, as our commentaries say, the sun shouldn't be setting now. It's too early in the day, and it's happening so quickly. So he was a little bit, I don't want to say scared, but he was not at ease. And therefore he decided to pray that everything goes good and goes safe. What happens to a traveler in the desert? When it gets dark, they prepare to set up camp to sleep there the evening. So what he did was, he takes 12 stones. Obviously there's a lot with the number 12. He takes 12 stones of the altar that was built by his grandfather for his father to almost be sacrificed on, and he puts it around him as a shelter, as a barrier. And then he goes to sleep. And then we all know what happens. All of the stones are saying, I want to be under the righteous man's head. No, I want to be. No, I want to be. Back and forth. And God, abracadabra, they become one stone, one pillow, all under Jacob's head. We're not going to focus in on that, although there's a lot to talk about. But I'm just giving us a basic narrative. All of what I just said can all be read into the very verse that our Torah portion starts with. If anyone there are some chumashim over here. If not, you'll follow along orally. I'm at the beginning of our Parashat, and listen to the following. Vayetze Yaakov Beersheva, and now Jacob leaves his hometown, Beersheva, Vayelech Harana, and he's going en route to Haran. So how old is he here? He's 77. Okay? Because he took 14 years studying in yeshiva. Vayifga b'makom. Vayifga b'makom means he encountered this place very fast. Oh, we know what that means. As soon as he had the intention to be at Hamakom, where else was Hamakom found? The place. It doesn't say the mountain, it was the place. The very same place where his father and his grandfather were to almost sacrifice Isaac. Vayifga, he gets up there, as the commentaries say, it's a terminology of prayer, and he prays. Next, Vayalen Sham, he sleeps there. God wants to host him. Kiva Shemish, because God made the sun set very quickly, right away. Vaikach me'avnei makom, and he takes stones from around. Vayasem rashtav, and he puts it around his head to protect his head, which in and of itself is a great novelty. If you want to protect yourself, you're not just going to put stones around your head. You're going to put it maybe all around your body. You might build a wall. But there's obviously a spiritual protection that was being put in place at that moment. Vayishkav b'makom ahu, and he finally goes to sleep in that place. Our commentaries tell us he sleeps now for the first time in 14 years. His whole 14 years that he was in the yeshiva of Shem Be'ever, he did not sleep. He was dozing, but he never brought himself to a bed. That's how dedicated he was to his preparing himself for the next stage in his life. Now the Zera Shimshon brings a midrash. This midrash is bewildering. Yet the lesson that we're going to learn from it, I think, is definitely life-changing. And many of us will look back in our lives and say, we've done this. Others will say, we should have done this. And hopefully all of us will say, we will start doing this. Okay? The Midrash tells us at this very moment when Jacob comes to Har Moriah, the mountain where he was going to sleep, where his father and his grandfather were, the world put up some type of spiritual wall to withhold Jacob from leaving this place, specifically before he sleeps there. So the Zera Shimshon says, what's going on? Why would the world want to stop Jacob in his path and hold him at this place? What's so important about Jacob being stuck over here that the world now needs to set up this spiritual barrier, this iron dome, however you want to imagine it, to keep Jacob in this exact place? Comes the Zera Shimshon, the answers through a Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. It's another sefer, it's another type of midrash, a fascinating concept. The Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer says that the world was created obviously over 2,000 years prior to Jacob at this point, but the world's foundation was not set. The foundation was not secure and strong, specifically for humanity, and more specific for the Jewish people. So what did God do at this point? Do you think it's just by chance that Jacob happened to take rocks from the very altar where Isaac was going to self-sacrifice himself? And specifically the number 12? No, 12 is obviously alluding to the 12 tribes he was going to have, and he was going to set up the Jewish people with. God takes these 12 stones, he puts them together, the concept of unity, the concept of living with one another. And then he takes that stone while Jacob is sleeping, and he takes it and he submerges it deep into the foundations of the world, strengthening the foundation of the world. Now this happened in a physical realm, but more importantly, even in a spiritual realm. And this is what the world was holding back Jacob from not leaving. The world needed Jacob to set his eyes on those 12 stones, select them, put them together, and for it to be submerged into strengthening the foundation of the world. Sounds very nice, but then the Zera Shimshon wonders, well, why now? Why wasn't this earlier? Why wasn't it once he already had the 12 sons? Maybe right after he got his blessing. Maybe when he purchased at the age of 15 his brother's birthright. Why right now, at age 77, is the time that the world now has, the foundation of the world has to be strengthened and put in its upright fashion? Very good. So the Zera Shimshon says, right now the world had to become and merge into a different type of world. The world now of no longer of just a family, but now a nation, specifically the Jewish nation. Abraham was a family man. He had 2 sons. He had one son which went the wrong way. He had one son that went the right way. Isaac, he also had a small family. He had one son that went the wrong way and one son that went the right way. Jacob now was going to have 12 sons. 12 sons is not a little family. It's literally cheaper by the dozen. It is a lot more children, a lot more grandchildren, as we see as soon as they become 70 people to Egypt in very, very short time. And only 210 years later, they are at the total population of 15 million people. How did that happen? Because it's not a family anymore. It's a nation. And they were blessed to multiply. And when we get to the Parashat of Shemot, the book of Exodus, we'll speak about all that. But he's now upgrading his status from being just a person or a family to a nation. At this point, the Zera Shimshon says, the world had to have a very strong foundation. Now Jacob was about to start his, you want to call it his real life. His life of working for his wives, and then working for his own livelihood, and having children, and then having grandchildren. This was a different scene for Jacob. Listen to the lesson I draw from this. And it's evident this is what the Zera Shimshon meant as always. When a person has a relationship, and this is any type of relationship, and we're going to give a couple of examples, the success of that relationship is going to be based on the fundamentals, the foundations of respect that are set out from the beginning. What I mean by that is if a person already is disrespectful or disrespected at a certain point in the relationship, and worse, earlier it is, that line was crossed and the relationship will never be the same. There are certain things that in marriage which are just unacceptable. There are certain things when it comes between a child and a parent that there are just lines that you do not cross. Once those lines were crossed, it's very hard for that relationship to get back to its original manner, its original fashion. And that's why, and you can only control yourself. One thing we always speak about is you can't change anybody except for yourself. You can try to teach, you can lead by example. We always speak about preaching never helps. Leading by example helps more. But you can't change anybody except yourself. You have the free will, the control in your life to only change yourself. Not your spouse, not your children, not the people that work for you, not the people that you work for. And therefore, it's up to us to set these foundations and these principles of honor and respect from the get-go, from the foundation of the relationship. If it means the way we speak, if it means the things we do, if it means not saying certain things which are derogatory or putting the other person down or screaming one's head off, these are things which can tamper with the relationship from the very beginning, and it's going to be almost very, very hard, if not impossible, to ever go back on. I've given this example once, and I'll give it again. There are certain businesses that every moment you can't go too long without people cursing and swearing at each other. Now, it would be bad enough if that was happening between the people working there and the customers, right, or the consumers, but at least between the co-workers, there are certain businesses that just, the atmosphere, I'm using this in quotations, allows for derogatory statements and cursing, four-letter words and screaming and all of the juicy stuff. How did that happen? When did that start? So it all starts from, how did the person who set up this business conduct themselves? Himself or herself? Does he or she use foul language in their life, with their co-workers, with the people that work for them? Or is there a mandate and a standard of respect that line is just not crossed? We don't put people in that uncomfortable situation. We don't open the door for people to say those things. And you can look right at the top. If you look at the business owner, and the business owner comes in, and I know we're speaking in South Florida, and things are a little more loosey-goosey, but if the business owner comes in ripped jeans and a tank top, and he has a tattoo with tattoo, without tattoo, it doesn't matter. But it sends now a certain demeanor. It sets now a certain standard. If you come in wearing a suit, wearing a tie, dressed respectable, and that just sets a different standard. So you look at the boss, you look at the CEO, you look at the founder of the company, and if they're slurring and they're saying not nice words, well, that's how everyone else is going to continue. Parents, at home, if we say things which are derogatory about another individual, we are now setting a standard, unfortunately a low standard, to allow our children to come home and speak to us negatively about others, or speak amongst themselves negatively about others. Because we now, as the heads of our houses, which we are supposed to be, as the father and the mother in the house, we need to set the standard. Once we set the standard in our house, then everyone can comply and everyone can go along with it. If that standard is compromised, especially from the very beginning, that foundation is now cracked and tampered with, and it's going to be very, very hard to put back together. You have a single girl and a single guy, and they decide to go out with each other, and they start dating each other. If certain levels of respect or even levels of comfort are broken from the beginning, then it's going to be very hard for that relationship to be a successful one. I don't need to get too graphic. I don't need to use too many words. I think we all understand very clearly what I mean. And this is for all ages. It doesn't matter if they're in their teens, if in their 20s, their 30s, 40s, or if in your 70s, like Jacob was, okay? There is a certain standard, there's a certain level that a person is able to decide from the get-go, and that will strengthen the foundation for an everlasting relationship. This is why the world had to be strengthened right now, because now Jacob was starting a new chapter in his life. A chapter in his life where the foundation, in order to build upon this world, had to be strengthened in a very, very powerful and strong way. Moving on, we now come to Jacob falling asleep. And he has this prophetic dream. And this is a very famous dream. I'm sure all of our children have one time or another come home with this drawing. Can someone help me with this? This is with a ladder and angels. And everyone knows that the angels are not just standing there or suspended. They're going up and they're going down. Okay. This dream was a very special dream to Jacob, because in essence what happened is God is promising Jacob that he will be with him, he will be there to protect him, to bless him in all of his continued life endeavors, which is a great, a great element of confidence that Jacob was now infused with, God promising him that everything was going to be all right, that everything was going to be successful for him in everything that he did. We do see very soon after, Jacob becomes very, very successful in no time at all. Jacob now gets up and he promises to God that he will make sure he upholds all of the teachings that he learned by his father's house, all of the teachings he learned in the yeshiva, and he was going to now go and raise a family. The verse says, and this is in chapter 28, verse 17. Anyone following along in the Chumash, it's on page 146. The Torah says, Vayira Vayomar, and Jacob was scared. Yir'ah. Okay? What was he scared about? I mean, he just had a nice nap. He was scared. How could I fall asleep in such a holy place? How could it be that I'm at the holiest place in the world, a place where in years to come, this is going to be the place where the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, is going to enter only one day a year and has to have the purest of thoughts and intentions, and if not, God forbid, would pass away, and I was sleeping here like it was nothing? So he was scared that maybe he didn't conduct himself or comport himself in the highest of standards. Vayomar, now he goes on to say, and I'm going to quote. Oh, very good. Look at that. Manora hamakom hazeh. How awesome is this place? Enze, this is nothing but ki im bet Elokim. This is the house of God. This is where the temple, the Bet HaMikdash, is going to be built. Veze shar hashamayim. And this is the gates of heaven. So the Zera Shimshon, I'm going to bombard you with all his questions, but even if you don't remember all the questions, it's fine, because the answer, one concept is going to answer it all. He basically takes this verse and he dissects it. He says, every single part of this verse, I have a question on. First of all, he says, why is Jacob relating to the temple as Nora, awesome? And furthermore, Ma Nora, it's like, wow, it's very awesome. Awesome not only like in its grandeur, but like awestruck. What's so awesome about the temple and about what Jacob is now experiencing after getting up from that prophetic dream? Furthermore, the Zera Shimshon asks, what is the reason the verse is speaking in a negative terminology of En ze, this is nothing but Bet Elokim, the house of God? Just say, this is the house of God. It's like I come to you and I say, this is nothing but a cup of seltzer. Just say, this is a cup of seltzer. Or, no, this one's seltzer. Let's try it. Yeah, seltzer, it's what I asked for. Okay? Right, this is nothing but a book. No, this is a book. Are there any lawyers in the room? No? Okay, good. We have a bunch of Jews. That means we have a bunch of Sephardic Jews. What? No, you're not the only one, don't worry.
Not the mother of a lawyer.
Okay, the mother of a lawyer. Okay, good. Lawyers, grandmother of a lawyer. Okay, very good. Okay, lawyers speak in a very flowery terminology of a certain statement or an agreement or in the way that they write. But a simple person, a regular person in our regular speaking, we're just going to say, this is the house of God. Not, this is nothing but the house of God. Okay? The Zera Shimshon's bothered, what's this negative connotation that's in this verse? Furthermore, he asks, what's the terminology of Shar HaShamayim? This is the gates of heaven. This is the gates of heaven? Like, could you go to heaven there? What does that exactly mean? It's a very valid question. I know many of us have in our minds, well, we already know of synagogues or congregations which are called Shar HaShamayim. Right? Because I was married in the Shar HaShamayim in Montreal. Okay? So it's referred to as a synagogue. It's referred to as... But this is obviously the first place in our Torah that we see this idea. What's that exactly mean, the Zera Shimshon says? And finally, he ends off with another question. And he introduces the question based on a halacha that we have on the laws of Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is the national day that our sages instituted to mourn the destruction of both of our temples. Very sad, very hard days. We actually mimic most of the laws of Yom Kippur, the fasting and the withholding oneself from any type of enjoyment. From Yom Kippur, we mimic that onto the day of Tisha B'Av in order that we express and we feel the mourning, the pain, the suffering, the lack of the temple not being with us. There is a tradition, this is not one of the main laws, there's a tradition that is brought down by the Tur, which is one of our great halachic rabbinical figures and others as well, to take a rock or a stone and guess what? Place it under your pillow. Place this rock or this stone under your pillow. You know why? Very good. That's exactly the terminology that the Torah says. Zecher leYaakov. To remind us of Jacob, who slept. He put his head on a stone in the place where the temple was going to be built. So too, we should also place a stone under our heads on the day that we commemorate and remind ourselves and mourn, most importantly, the day of the passing, the day of the destruction of our temples. And the Torah ends off by saying, the word from the verse, he quotes our verse right over here, chapter 28, verse 17. He quotes, because Jacob refers to this place as Norah, as awesome. Again, the Zera Shimshon is saying, from the word Norah, awesome, how does that teach us about the destruction of the temple? Okay? All of this, the Zera Shimshon says, come along with me, hold my hand, and let me walk you through this verse in a novel interpretation. Okay? What did Jacob actually see in this prophetic dream? God showed Jacob all of the future events that were going to occur in that very place. It's like he put his head right over there and he attached to all the future events that were going to take place there. To the building of the first temple, to all of the service that was done in the temple, to the destruction of the temple, to having it 70 years being barren and destroyed, and then coming back and being rebuilt, and having the second temple stand for 410 years, right? The first one for 420 years. And then it being destroyed again. And now even everything that we go through today, all of the fact that the Muslims and the Arabs have taken it over, and they built the Dome of the Rock over there, and its destruction, and it's being rebuilt, and it's being occupied, and this one occupied, and that one occupied. Jacob saw all of that at this very moment when he slept there. Having that in mind, the Zera Shimshon says, listen to the proper way to read this verse, and it's going to answer each of our questions. He starts off by saying, Ma nora hamakom hazeh, how awesome is this place? Jacob was fascinated with being able to see the future events of the temple being built at this very location. And he was awestruck. Ma nora hamakom hazeh, how awesome and great is this place? But then the verse says, En zeh. En zeh, the Zera Shimshon says, but then Jacob also sees that the temple is going to be destroyed. So En zeh, that's negative, because this beautiful and awesome temple, En zeh, it's going to be destroyed. Okay? But what's the everlasting place that's going to be there? The everlasting structure that's going to be there is going to be Ki'im Bet Elokim. What's Bet Elokim? The third Bet HaMikdash. The one that is not built by human beings. The one that's built by God Himself, that He has already prepared, He's going to bring down. That place is going to be the everlasting house of God. So Manora Makom Hazeh, he sees the two temples. En zeh, he sees it being destroyed. Ki'im Bet Elokim, only the house of God, the one that God Himself builds, is going to be there and everlasting. And then he ends off by saying, V'zeh shar hashamayim, nevertheless, whether the temple is up or the temple is not up, whether we're waiting for the Mashiach or the Mashiach and the third temple is already there, this is going to be the gates to heaven, meaning this is going to be the direction that every Jew prays in worldwide, no matter where you are. If you think of it, even today, we always are trying to, at least here in America, in North America, we're always facing east. Okay? And those that are in Europe, they're facing southeast. And those in Africa, they're facing north. And for the Jews that are in Asia, they're facing west. And even when you're in Israel or in Jerusalem specifically, every synagogue is always facing towards the Kodesh HaKodashim, towards where the temple stood. This is because it is literally referred to as the gates of heaven. It's going to be the place where the Jewish people forevermore are going to pour their hearts out, crying and speaking and thanking and requesting God, all from that place, all in that direction. And that's why Zeh Shar HaShamayim, this is the gate of heaven. But now the Zera Shimshon takes it a little deeper, and he quotes to us a piece of the Talmud. The Talmud says that Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses himself, he referred to God the way we refer to Him, by the way, in our silent prayer of Hakel, Hagadol, Hagibor, Vehanora. Hakel, our God, Hagadol, who is great, Gibor, strong, Nora, awesome. Moses himself instituted, this is the way we should refer to God. The Talmud also goes on to continue and says, we don't have the right to just keep on going and giving more synonyms to God's greatness, because once we start, well, how could we ever stop? God's infinite. Right? God is almighty, omnipresent, infinite. There's nowhere to stop. So we only go with whatever our predecessors, our great righteous ancestors, they're the ones who decided what to say. This is Moshe Rabbeinu, okay? Comes now, right at the end of Yirmiyahu's life. Yirmiyahu was a Navi, and Yirmiyahu passed away right about when the first temple was destroyed. Yirmiyahu comes now and he says, I cannot, after living through the destruction of the temple, I cannot refer to God as Nora anymore, as awesome. He says Hakel, Hagadol, Hagibor, but I can't say awesome anymore. Because if God was so awesome, in His awesomeness, He would not allow the enemies of the Jews to plunder the temple and to set us out to exile as such. A little later, this is still before the second temple was rebuilt, Daniel, which was another prophet who sat on the great assembly of men, the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah, he says, I'm not even able to say Gibor anymore. That God is strong. Because if God was strong in all of his strength, again, he would not allow the Gentiles to plunder our temple and make us have to abandon this amazing structure, this spiritual place where we connected with the Almighty. Comes the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah, the great assembly of men, and they come and they say, wrong. On the contrary, because the temple was destroyed, this is why we actually have to refer to God as Gibor and Norah as well, as strong and awesome as well. Why? And they explain. They said that if God was not that strong or that awesome, you know what God would have allowed to happen? That they would have just taken over the temple and murdered all the Jewish population and gotten rid of everybody. This reminds us back of the great promise that God promises Moshe Rabbeinu. He promises him that after the fact, after Moshe Rabbeinu knew he couldn't enter the land of Israel, he was kind of at ease with. The very fact that you, Moshe Rabbeinu, are not going to build the temple will be a reason that God can one day destroy it. And all the more so that since God didn't build the temple, he'll be able to destroy it. The Zera Shimshon explains, you know how great, you know how awesome and strong God is that he allowed his anger to be surmised and taken over in order that his home, his own home would be destroyed, but his people, his chosen people, would survive. And they would not, unfortunately, perish at the hands of our enemies. That's what makes God so awesome. That's what really makes a person strong. As the Mishnah tells us, Ezil Gibor hakovesh et yitzro. God himself, although God doesn't have a yetzer hara, he doesn't have an evil inclination, right? He obviously created it, but God still does work and does act, so to say, in ways that we can learn from him, in ways that we can mimic him. And so he did, that he allowed his mercy to overcome his anger and his, you want to say anger? Let's say disappointment for the Jewish people, and allowed his home to be destroyed. That's what makes him so great. The Zera Shimshon also says, if we look at our prayer and we say Gadol, Gibor, and Norah, each of them refer to one of our patriarchs. Gadol refers to Avraham Avinu. What was Avraham Avinu's trait? Chesed. Chesed is loving kindness. What's a person who's loving and kind? They're big, they're large, they're generous. Okay? Gibor. Gibor is Yitzchak, which refers to, his trait was judgment, din, strength. Learning how to set boundaries and stay within those boundaries. That was Isaac. Norah refers to Jacob. What was Jacob's trait? Jacob's trait was emet. Emet being truth. Having a perfect, truthful, complete balance between chesed, loving kindness, as well as din and judgment. And what Jacob did was he fusioned those two concepts and made a emet, a Torat emet, a Torah which is only truthful and one that's good for us and great for us to live on. And that's why Norah is referred to Jacob. The Zera Shimshon says Norah is also Jacob because this is the way Jacob referred to the place of the Beit HaMikdash and referred to the very Beit HaMikdash itself as an awesome place because it was so awesome, God knew when to allow it to be destroyed at the expense of not having the Jewish people being destroyed. I wonder if anyone has seen this, and if not, I highly, highly recommend you to. I'll post it in the comments of the video when we upload the video online. Has anyone seen, by show of hands, a 20-minute documentary called The Mystery of the Jews? Please, someone put your hand up. Oy, oy, oy. You know what? I didn't. I was so close to bringing a projector and having us watch it tonight because it's much more interesting than me, okay? A 20-minute documentary. You can search it on YouTube. Bli neder, I'm going to put the link in the comments below. It is so worthwhile watching. But please do me a favor. Don't just watch it yourself. either watch it with someone, most importantly, try to watch it with your children, or at least share it to people you care about. Okay? This documentary called The Mystery of the Jews shows us how much of a miracle it is that as Jews we have survived generation after generation. Triumph, kingship, after one after another and after another. And the Egyptians rose, and then we were left behind. And then these ones, and then and these ones, and these ones. And we were always small in number, yet we always survived. Until today. I don't know. This one, no. I don't know. This is, and then it also, this video, I'm not going to tell you, you're going to watch it, okay? This video also goes through and says, what do the righteous Gentiles have to say about the survival of the Jews? And it is a timeless piece, a well worth it 20 minutes documentary that I really, really hope we all watch, because this is exactly what we're speaking about tonight. That God is so awesome, God is so strong. Strength isn't in the numbers. Strength isn't in lifting 500 pounds or running great distances. No, it's about control. It's about maintaining what you have, controlling what you have. God was very, very specific. It was a blessing and a curse at the same time he gave to Moshe Rabbeinu before he passed away. He says, the Jews, they will always survive, but they'll be small in number, and they'll be dispersed and scattered all over the world. We look at that as, or some look at that as, a curse. It's actually the greatest blessing, because if we look at all the other superpowers of the world and all of their monstrosity and their strength and their guerrilla warfare and their technology and everything that they've ever had, where is it all now? Is there anyone that can locate an original Egyptian from back then, the ones, or a descendant of the ones who suppressed and oppressed the Jews, or Romans or Persians or Greeks, or even Spanish? Even Nazis, Yamach Shemam to all of them. There are none or very few left, because this is the way of the world. The nations of the world will have very, very, very high spikes and rises, and they're going to fall very, very low, and there'll be almost none left. I'm going to springboard into a completely same topic, but I wasn't planning on saying this because we do have one more part to say, but I think it's well worth it. It's something I like talking about because it's very, very true. If we look at the world globe, can we identify places where Jews have not lived in large amount of numbers? Almost none. If you start anywhere, in, if you want to call it Asia or Russia area, there's been plenty of Jews which were there and expelled. Maybe besides for the Orient and, the Orient there was, but I'm saying, okay, but I'm saying large amounts. Maybe besides for Australia, but every other place in the world, there were large amount of Jews there and expelled. If you look at Africa, if you look at Europe, if you look at South America, which was very recent, many of our families were even there and had to leave. America is the last place where Jews were still never asked to leave. Yeah. And based, and I'm no professional historian. Maybe let's ask, is there any historians in the room? Okay, so that would qualify me as one. No, I'm joking. But based on our world and our Jewish history, there's only one next step that is going to happen. And that is going to be that the place that we call home, the place that we feel so comfortable in, will one day, maybe sooner than later, ask us to leave. Has anyone saw, my wife actually sent it to me, I think it was last week. There was this Christian individual, and I don't say that in a derogatory way because there are many, many righteous, Jew-loving Christians, Israel supporters, but this guy wasn't for a certain reason, and he gets up on national TV, and in his banner, like you see how we have the Miami Torah Center, he had Trump news in his background. Does anyone see this? This is ridiculous. And the guy's screaming, this whole impeachment against our president. And I don't want to get political. Do you like our president? Do you not like our president? But we can all agree that our president likes the Jews and he likes Israel. Okay? So forget anything else. Okay? I'm not going to say what color I wear. I'm Canadian anyways. I'm not an American citizen, so it doesn't matter. Okay? Although I care about the place that we live in. Okay, but I won't say any more than that. And he gets up and he's saying this whole impeachment against our president is a Jew coup. And he was saying it in such a derogatory way, and he was saying such nasty things about Jews on national TV. And one would think if anyone else would get up and say such about a colored individual, about an Islamic individual, about a Chinese individual, any other type of person, everyone will go crazy. But this fellow feels that he has the right to get up on national TV and start speaking in a very derogatory manner about Jews. Mark my words, and I'm no historian, as I said, and I'm definitely not a prophet. It is a matter of time that the country we call home, the country we feel very secure in, the country we are able to wear a kippah, we're able to walk out on Shabbat even wearing a talit, and we're able to have restaurants that publicize that they're kosher, and all the other great advantages and commodities that we have living in the United States of America will all not be taken for granted very soon and maybe not even be allowed. Look at Spain. Look at France. Do you know that I'm going to give a rough number around 80 years ago and more, 80, 90, 100 years ago, you would walk up to a German Jew living in Germany and you would tell them, do you know one day 6 million of our brothers and sisters are going to perish over here and we're going to be treated in a very, very wrong way and there will be a genocide against us? They would have looked at you and said, sir or ma'am, please check in to the closest crazy house or go see a psychiatrist or a psychologist very, very quickly. If not, we're going to have to admit you into the hospital. Because they never believed it. You know what? The Jews in Spain didn't believe it. Okay, we're talking back 500 years ago. They never imagined in their wildest dreams. Do you know the Jews in Egypt never imagined that the Egyptians would turn on them one day, and it happened so quick? What makes us think that the only land in the world that did not yet ask the Jews to leave or treat us wrong is not going to do it? Did I convince you?
Every Jew needs to have their
But now what's the point?
passport up to date.
Yes, okay, that's like obviously. Okay? Antisemitism, which I like to speak more about at the beginning of Exodus, but since we're already on the topic and I see I have your attention, antisemitism is, to some, the greatest curse, the hardest thing that ever happened to Jews, and to others, the greatest blessing. The greatest blessing. Rabbi, how could anti-Semitism be a blessing? How could people saying things which are negative on TV about Jews, screaming at Jews driving by them, throwing, torturing, hurting, killing, how could all that be good? When we understand the mechanism of anti-Semitism and how it obviously was God that put that into this world, right? Just like God made the sun rise and the sun set, and He created Gentiles and Jews and animals and vegetation and the ocean and everything that we have and the season. Thank God here in South Florida we don't have that much of a season, okay? It was very exciting for the kids to come out this morning with their jackets and their scarves. But God created all this, right? Is anti-Semitism a mistake? Or is anti-Semitism planted by God? I want to go with the latter and listen to the following. Anti-Semitism is a mechanism that God put into the nations of the world for our benefit. You know why? To remind us, hey Jew boy, hey Jew girl, you're different. Anytime as Jews we start acting and we start trying to be exactly and outdoing the other inhabitants in our country, in our city that we live in, that's when they start looking at us and they're saying, hey, you're not acting Jew-like. You're acting like the way we should be. And you know what? You're like a better version than us. And then they become jealous. And that is the sparks. And that is the plant, the seeds of anti-Semitism. We look at it as like, hey, I want to outdo my competition. I want to outdo my neighbors. I want to outdo the other people that live in this country. But that's not what God wants from us. God wants us to be the best Jew. And we happen to be in exile, so He wants us to be the best Jew in exile. He doesn't want us to be a Gentile plus in exile. He doesn't want us to be a better version of Gentiles. Because Gentiles have their place, their purpose, their mission in this world. And some of them rise up to that calling and do a great job at it. Just like some Jews do and some Jews don't. Anti-Semitism is a mechanism. Again, it rhymes, so it's very easy to remember. Anti-Semitism is a mechanism that God put into the brains, into the hearts of the Gentiles in order to remind us that we are different. I normally don't take questions, but I'll take a quick one. Is it quick?
Very quick. What happens to free will of these anti-Semites?
What happens to free will? Well, okay. It's a longer conversation, but although we have free will, there are certain things which kind of go with the flow and we do and don't have a choice, right? The same way as a person has the free will to take someone's life, to take something that's not theirs, to take something that is theirs. But at the core of all of those feelings, there's a nature within us which drives us a certain way. Okay? There are certain people which their nature drives them a certain way, but then they have the free will to choose which way. Okay? Gentiles the same way. They have in their nature, it's like a sensor. Okay? It's kind of like when an animal feels in danger, they have a certain sensor that triggers them to act a certain way. They have within them a sensor that when a Jew is not acting Jew-like, to start oppressing them and to start segregating them and treating them differently. We look at that as anti-Semitism. We look at that as racism. God looks at that as our protection mechanism, because it's because of anti-Semitism. Now I'm taking this the next step. It's because of anti-Semitism, which God instituted in the world, that the Jews have survived so long. Because if we would have been welcomed with open arms to every single country and society we've ever been to, we would have assimilated 100%. That's exactly what happened with every other. Okay? Just no longer than 400 years ago, when human beings, all types, started immigrating from France and from England to the United States. How many today, descendants of those people who traveled over, identify as French Americans or English Americans? Very few, if not at all. Why? It's because they completely assimilated to the society that they moved into. If the Jews would be accepted to every society in every country they've ever met with and become part of, they would have completely assimilated and there would have been no more. So whenever we hear these stories of hate crimes, anti-Semitism, racism, we have to not allow it. We have to not stand for it. We're not obligated to be bullied and pushed around. But we have to remember and think, why is this happening? What type of, and you mentioned something very smart, what type of measures do we need to take in order to mitigate whatever's going to happen? Right? Just as a simple example, having up-to-date passports is always a must. Okay? Making sure to, there is a saying, the wandering Jew. Yes, we are wandering Jews. Making our lifestyle in a way that we're able to pick up and move, if God forbid something happens in time, is something which is required from us. But Jews, when a Jew travels and how much things we have in I'm sure we could go into each and every one of our garages and we have stuff packed in like there's no room for anything, okay? We sometimes forget that we're living in exile. But at least in our minds, in our hearts, we have to realize that the country that we live in, the society that we live in, even though right now, or until now, it's been really open arms, and who knows if that's changing, hopefully it's not. What I'm saying is not a curse, God forbid. What I'm saying is a reality check of look at Jewish world history, look at where we've proceeded in every other country, and be smart about what we do here. That also means the more Jewish we act, the less they'll hate us. It's counterintuitive. You think if I act more like you, you'll like me better, right? That's not true. If you act more like yourself, if you act more like your ancestors, the way God wanted it to be, that's when they'll respect you. That's when they'll appreciate and learn how to identify with your differences and respect you for that. But when you try to be exactly like someone, that's when they feel threatened, and that's where they have to put an end to it. So, ending with this, may we be blessed, may we be spared from any trials and tribulations. It could be anytime soon, it could be in a decade, in 2, 3, it's not that much more. How long has our Jewish ancestors been in a certain place and comfortable and happy and safe for? It's just a matter of time. And just like everything else in the world is moving at a rapid lightning speed, whether that be technology, medicine, business, children, everything that happens in life nowadays is happening so fast. So what makes us think that the concept of anti-Semitism and the concept of speaking out against Jews and the way they'll treat us will just slow down if everything else is speeding up? So let this be an awakening for us. Let us know that this is what makes God so great and awesome. It's because He saw all this, obviously, and He showed this all to Jacob, that his descendants will be scattered, dispersed all over the world. And that's going to be a part of collecting them back and coming back to Israel. It's a nice thing, and this is a great thing, that it's been just over 70 years that we have the land of Israel, and we're able to call it our home. And although tonight you might have thought was like a political speech, but just shedding a little light on the tragedies, the political tragedies that are taking place in our very own home country is sad. And this is something that God really is hurt from. So God is not so hurt from anti-Semitism. As we explained, it's a mechanism He created to protect us. But you know what's worse than anti-Semitism? A self-hating Jew. Or Jews which just oppose other Jews just for the sake of fighting, just for the sake of greed and ego. And a lot of what's going on now in the political realms of the state of Israel are so sad to watch, so sad to listen to, and in a certain way, I wish, and I was speaking this over with a friend of mine, and it's never going to happen, but I wish there was a way that every Jew around the world had voting rights on the way the land of Israel evolves. Because the Jews outside of Israel sometimes care more about the land of Israel than some Jews that live in Israel. And it would be without a question that all of us, not all of us, you can never say all, right? But that most of the Jews in the diaspora would elect the rightful prime minister of the state of Israel, one that God has showered a lot of blessing on and showed favor to, and hopefully very, very, very soon, God will make sure that he is re-elected and stays in office and in power as long as he does, and he continues to helping the Jews. He doesn't go around forcing Jews to be committed to Torah, and he doesn't go around forcing Jews to be uncommitted. He allows everyone to make their own choices and their own free wills, the way we're supposed to be, but not like the opposing parties, which want to eradicate all Judaism and traditions and Torah that so many decades, so many of our ancestors worked so hard to put into and invest into the land of Israel. And a couple quacks are trying to take that out and remove that after all the hard work that we put into it. So we can't vote. We don't have those voting rights, but we can pray for the well-being of our brothers and sisters in the state of Israel and the freedom of religion. Can you imagine there would have come a point that we need to preach and we need to vote for the freedom of religion and religious decisions in our very own homeland? May the merit of learning the Zera Shimshon, may the merit of all of the other mitzvot and great things that we do all go towards saving us from any hardships in our own country and any hardships for us and our brothers and sisters in the Holy Land of Israel, and also again serve as a elevating of a neshama for Yosef ben Yitzchak ben Tolila. You're going to get up and recite Kaddish in a moment, and also for the father of Rabbi Nightingale, Yitzchak David ben Reuven, who it's his 5th year anniversary. So 26th year anniversary, 5th year anniversary. Thank you everyone for coming. Please, please, please make brachot. We have mizonot, shakol, etz, adama, all of the above. Leilu nishmat Yosef ben Yitzchak, and we would really, really appreciate that. We're going to have you do Kaddish. Sami. Rabbi Chaim ben Kshamer, Tzak Kodesh Baruch Hu lezakot et Yisrael, lefichach irba lehem Torah mitzvot shenemar, Adonai chafetz leman tzidko yagdil Torah v'yadir.